What really happens when you vape or smoke? It's not just about the feeling that you experience, it's about the way the heat transforms everything. From the flavors that you taste to how the experience unfolds. And the differences might surprise you. Here at TVape, we are avid connoisseurs of vaporizers. We have tested and reviewed them for over a decade. Over the years, we've seen myths spread and trends come and go, and one question always resurfaces. What happens after you die? No, that one just happens after we test a product for a while. The real question that keeps coming up is, how does vapor compare to smoke? Just a little disclaimer before we get into this. This video is based on our observations, testing, and community feedback. We're going to source any research that we think is relevant or adds educational value. We are not medical professionals, and trust me, I am well aware of that. I hear it every single time I go to my parents' house to do laundry. So this is not medical advice, and if you have any health concerns, please consult an actual medical professional, not a guy on YouTube. This is not going to be published in any scientific journals, but we hope that this video can help with a reasonable amount of accuracy for a YouTube video. First, we're going to review some key differences between the two heating methods. Then we're going to show a live experiment we did, so stick around. First, let's talk about the obvious difference. What happens to your herb during each heating method? Smoke is produced when any material reaches the point of combustion, and it is the byproduct of the amount of heat needed to reach that point. The word vaping, on the other hand, comes from the Latin word vaporization, which occurs at a lower temperature than combustion. And yes, there will be a test at the end of this, so take detailed notes. So that's pretty straightforward, but what about the process? Well, when it comes to smoking herbs, it's the most well-known and classic method. And it is what most people think of when they think of using dry herbs. Here's how it works. When you light herb on fire, it combusts, creating smoke, and this smoke contains chemicals. Those chemicals are all of the active compounds and terpenes that you are looking for. It's straightforward and requires no special equipment, just a lighter and something to smoke it out of. The effects hit quickly, which many people enjoy, although they might not hit quicker than vaporization. More on that later. But it is a familiar, ritualistic experience that many people enjoy. It's the go-to. It's the classic, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, what about vaporization? What's the actual difference? Well, instead of heating the material enough for smoke to come out, vaporization heats at a lower temperature. This temperature is high enough so that just the active compounds come out, but not so high that it creates smoke. Here, a study on PubMed Central found that vaporizing dry herbs has found to produce less toxic prolific byproducts or compounds and reduce exposure to carbon monoxide, thereby reducing the respiratory risks usually associated with smoke. Vaporizers heat herbs to specific temperatures, usually between 180 and 220 degrees Celsius. This releases vapor instead of smoke, which has tons of active compounds such as terpenes. Since there's no combustion, there's no smoke, just vapor, which is a really good slogan for a vaporizer company. If you'd like to use that, go ahead. Just credit me every time you say it and give me 50% of your profits. I think that's a fair deal. At the end of the day, neither smoking nor vaporizing could be considered healthy in the traditional sense. Both involved bringing something into your lungs, which always has risk associated with it. However, each method has its own unique pros and cons. Combustion from smoke can provide a sense of tradition, whereas vaporizing provides a more flavorful alternative with potentially less harmful byproducts. The choice ultimately comes down to what fits your lifestyle, preferences, and priorities. One of the biggest differences between vapor and smoke is how you prepare for your session. When you smoke, particularly using a pre-roll, it's a pretty familiar process. It's a ritual of sorts. The grinding, the rolling, we all know how that works. This method is deeply rooted in tradition, and it's a form of nostalgia for longtime users. It involves minimal setup and minimal equipment. Vaporizers, on the other hand, introduce a learning curve that some people might find a little daunting, especially if you're Craig, our cameraman. Now, most of you won't actually have that much difficulty learning the process, but Craig gets very confused by basic things. He's locked himself out of his apartment 3 times this month and called me at 2 o'clock in the morning. The last time, I refused to answer. He will not learn if I keep helping him out. I have not heard from him since, so Harry is our new cameraman. Don't worry, Harry, you have small shoes to fill. Craig's dead now. Unlike regular combustion methods where you can just light and inhale, vaporizing requires a few more steps. Additionally, vaporizers require temperature settings, which will allow for more customization, but you do need to know how different temperatures affect the materials that you're using. More on this later. While this process does have a learning curve at the beginning, most people find once they jump over that hurdle, they can really see what the benefits are. Efficiency, smoother inhalation, and customizable experiences. And that far outweighs that learning curve you have to get over at the beginning. Ultimately, the choice between using traditional methods like pre-rolls or water pieces and a vaporizer is up to the individual. While vaporizers take some time to get used to, most people who make the transition really appreciate the added flexibility and long-term benefits. Over time, the vaporizing process becomes second nature and people really appreciate the ability to fine-tune their experiences. Now, don't just take my word for it. To ensure that we weren't being biased, we conducted a survey to see how users felt and if they noticed a difference after they purchased a vaporizer. 92% of participants agreed that they had a positive experience after switching to a vaporizer. 86% agreed that they felt much better after vaporizing as opposed to smoking. Now that in and of itself is interesting enough, but vaporizers have another advantage that I mentioned earlier: customization. But what does that mean to you? Well, we have to dive in a little deeper to see what vaporizers can offer. One of the best advantages of vapor over smoke is that you can choose different heating methods, which will give you varied experiences and outcomes. It's like the Subway sandwiches of heating methods. You can have the same thing that you did yesterday, but today you can put hot peppers on it. It's going to change the whole experience. Please don't put hot peppers in your vape. I hope I didn't have to say that. Vaporizers generally fall into 3 categories: conduction, convection, and induction. Others offer some variation between them, but understanding these 3 is more than enough. Conduction vaporizers heat the material directly, typically with a metal or ceramic plate or even a coil. This method provides rapid heat up time and consistent vapor production, which is ideal for people who want more quick, efficient sessions. However, conduction heating can sometimes produce uneven vaporization. You might need to actually stir the material inside to avoid charring or wasted product. This is best for users who want fast, hard-hitting sessions with minimal wait time. The pros are fast heat up, strong vapor production, and energy efficiency. The cons are potential for uneven heating, stirring the product, and even possible combustion at higher temperatures. Convection vaporizers heat dry herbs and concentrates by heating the air around the material without directly touching it. This method allows for more even heat distribution, which means that the materials will be extracted without the risk of burning. Convection heating tends to produce more smooth, flavorful vapor, and it is preferred by users who want to experience the full spectrum of the terpenes in their herbs. It's best for flavor enthusiasts and those who prefer longer, more controlled sessions. The pros: even heating, better flavor preservation, and more efficient use of materials. Cons: slightly longer heat up time, uses more power, and generally more expensive devices. Induction heating is seen less frequently, but it's still an efficient heating method that you might find in some bigger units. It uses electromagnetic energy to generate heat within the material rather than directly heating the material itself, so it's magic. This results in highly efficient, uniform heating with precise temperature control. Induction vaporizers are rare, but they are gaining popularity due to their ability to produce dense, flavorful vapor while minimizing waste. They are best for those who want the most technologically advanced experience with ultimate control. Pros: highly efficient, consistent heating, no risk of combustion, and precise temperature control. Cons: expensive, limited availability, and requires more power. Each heating method provides a unique experience and allows the users to customize their experience to their preferences. All right, Now there is another piece to the puzzle. Vaporizers also offer further customization of temperature settings, which is why all these methods are so different. So let's talk about it. To produce smoke, dry herbs are heated at very high temperatures, an intense heat that will likely combust all extracts at once, offering no flexibility in how they are released. This is a problem that I also have, but it's in a different way. And most guys have it at some point in time in their life. I have it a lot. That was a premature ejaculation joke. In contrast, vaporizers use specific temperature ranges. This influences the intensity and the duration of effects while also optimizing extraction. Temperature control in vaporizing is crucial because different extracts respond differently to different heat. Lower temperatures provide a more manageable, milder experience while also producing smoother vapor. Higher temperatures maximize extraction, providing a more immediate and stronger response. Unlike traditional methods that combust everything at once, vaping allows for a more gradual experience that allows users to create their ideal session based on their preferences. Temperature control also plays a major role in efficiency, but more on that later. For now, let's dive into the differences in flavor. This is a big deal for many, and it's one area where smoke and vapor can feel very different. From my experience, vaporizers can bring out more flavor from your herbs than traditional methods. But I've also noticed that not all vaporizers are the same. Some can bring out better flavor than others. So, how does that work? Well, think of terpenes as the natural compounds in any plant that give it its unique taste and aroma. They're like the herbs and spices in your favorite dish. When smoking, the high temperatures of combustion can destroy these terpenes before you even get a chance to taste them, which is a pretty accurate way to describe how my ex used to cook. Conversely, vaporizers heat your herb at lower temperatures, which will preserve those terpenes. But here is where it gets interesting. You can actually customize your flavor experience by adjusting the temperature. Different compounds are released at different temperatures, so you can actually highlight different specific flavors and effects by tweaking the heat. Low temperatures, around 160 to 180 degrees Celsius. This range is perfect for preserving delicate terpenes like limonene and pinene, giving you a more light, flavorful vapor with a milder effect. Medium temperatures, around 180 to 200 degrees Celsius. In this range, you'll start to unlock more active ingredients in a broader range of terpenes. The flavor is still prominent, but the effects are more pronounced. Think of it as a balanced experience, a flavorful experience, but with a bit more kick. High temperatures, above 200 degrees Celsius. You'll get thicker vapor at this range, but some of the more delicate terpenes will start to break down. That being said, it's still super relevant. Some people enjoy the taste that comes with combustion, and it's a familiar experience for many. Vaporizing, while often more flavorful, can still feel different and take some getting used to. It's also worth noting that the quality of your vaporizer matters. Cheaper or poorly made devices might not give you as much flavor as vaporizers that are designed to provide better flavor. At the end of the day, whether you prefer a more rich, robust flavor of smoke or all of the different levels that can come with vaporizing, it really comes down to whatever your preference is. Both methods have their own unique characteristics, and it's up to you to decide which one you prefer. Of course, personal preference isn't just about flavor. It's about how immediately you want to feel the effects and how long you want to feel those effects for. The difference between combustion and vaporizing became even more relevant when people focused more on practical outcomes than taste. Practical outcomes. Wink, you know what I'm getting at? I'm not saying what those outcomes are, but you know what wink means, right? When you inhale smoke from combustion, the more traditional method, you can start to feel those effects within 2 to 10 minutes. The experience will peak around 10 to 30 minutes and usually lasts 1 to 3 hours, depending on the amount used and your tolerance level. On the other hand, vaporizers heat your dry herb or concentrates at lower temperatures, which will create a vapor that's rich in active compounds. Some studies suggest that this might lead to the effects kick taking in a little faster than traditional methods, and this could be because of the way these active compounds are absorbed in your body. That being said, it's important to note that most of this research is on oil-based products, so it could act differently for loose plant material. Even with these variables, the overall duration seems to line up with traditional combustion methods, although some people do say that they feel the effects don't last as long when they vaporize. With that being said, let's get into some key differences in these methods. One main topic that we constantly hear is that vaporizers are more efficient with materials, but what does that mean? Studies suggest that vaporizers may extract materials more efficiently than combustion. Combustion tends to happen at higher temperatures, typically over 315 degrees Celsius, which can degrade active ingredients faster and result in faster consumption. For example, a small amount of herb might only last 2 to 3 inhales in a pre-roll. On the other side, we have vaporizers that heat at lower temperatures, releasing compounds without combustion. So for that same amount of herb that I just mentioned, you might actually get 4 to 6 inhalations depending on the quality of your vaporizer. And here's a tip that I learned the hard way. If you're using a smaller conduction vaporizer, make sure to stir the material halfway through. It's like flipping a pancake. You get the golden brown goodness on both sides instead of just heating one side of your herb. In conclusion, vaporizing extends your stash further. It's like buying a coffee maker and making your coffee at home instead of buying a Starbucks every day. This efficiency is beneficial in many ways, but its biggest benefit is saving you money. Wait, what? Vaporizers save you money? Well, let's talk about it. Let's face it, vaporizers aren't cheap, and spending hundreds of dollars on a device kind of feels like buying a blender that you're only going to use twice. But here's the thing, vaping pays for itself. Now, let's get into an important subject that I've heard many different opinions on. Let's start off by being honest with ourselves. Heating herb has a strong smell, no matter which way you do it. So you're gonna have to deal with that, especially if you're trying to be discreet. When it comes to smoke, the smell is strong and distinct and tends to stick around. It can stick to your hair, your clothes, your furniture. I'm sure we've all been walking around at some point in time and had a whiff of something in the air, and you know that the 420 Brotherhood is nearby. However, it could be a skunk, so don't just blindly run towards that smell. One is a good time, and one will destroy a significant chunk of your week. Vaporizing, on the other hand, is a bit more subtle. The smell is lighter, less recognizable, and tends to fade much faster. Think about it like microwaving popcorn. There is a smell, but it's definitely more subtle than the smell that comes from making popcorn on the stove. Now I want popcorn. We wanted to provide more than just a personal experience here, so we conducted a survey in which 80% of the people agreed that vaporizing didn't smell as much indoors. The other 20% are fucking. And for those of you who have ever used a vaporizer, this is common knowledge. Except for that 20%. That being said, vaping isn't completely odorless. If you're in a small, confined space like a car, somebody will notice the hint of something, especially if you get pulled over. So be very careful. People describe the smell often as burnt popcorn, but with a cracked window or a fan, the odor tends to fade quickly. I've vaped in hotel rooms. Not that I'm recommending it, but the vapor and odor cleared out very quickly. Smoke, on the other hand, might linger for hours, and it might even set off the smoke detectors. Because I've smoked in hotel rooms as well. Here's how you do it. Not that I'm recommending this one either. You go into the bathroom, you don't do it. But if you do it, that's how you do it, but don't do it. If discretion is a priority, there are always ways to minimize smell with both methods. If you want a sophisticated solution, some users find that using water filtration can help. If you really want to go all out, the Iceborne uses water and ice to smooth your vapor and capture more of the odor. For smoke though, the odor is harder to control, which will require more effort to cover it up. Whichever one works for you will depend on the situation that you're in and how much you want to stay under the radar. Beyond efficiency and cost, personal priorities like discretion or health might also influence whether or not you vape or smoke. However, health considerations remain a complex and often debated aspect of vaping versus smoking. It's important to be very clear up front that this is not medical or health advice, and that there is still further research going on as to the effects of vaporizing. That said, perceived differences between vaporizing and smoke are worth examining. Not to endorse one method over the other, but to contextualize common questions and concerns. When it comes to health, these methods are often compared, but it's important to realize that neither one of these methods is entirely risk-free. So if you're using either one, you're not really being healthy. What you need to think about is what you've eaten over the last couple of days. If it's only Pop-Tarts and Doritos, you're gonna wanna focus on that first, then worry about this next. Both involve inhaling substances into your lungs, which comes with potential risk. However, there are some key differences in how these methods are perceived regarding health. And remember, I am not a doctor or a scientist. I hold 0 degrees. I am what some people might call useless. Combustion produces smoke at higher temperatures, which may produce more byproducts than vaporizing. Many users report that smoke is harsher on their throat than vaporizing, giving the common perception that smoke is more irritating. While more research is definitely needed, anecdotal experiences seem to characterize vaporizing as less harmful or irritating to your throat due to the lower temperatures that it's heated at and the absence of smoke. That doesn't mean, however, that it is healthier. Are we clear? We are not stating at TVape that one is healthier than the other. I'm not a doctor. I am not a scientist. I am useless. This is where the comparison becomes intriguing. To better understand the differences between vaping and combustion, we used an experiment that involved a synthetic lung model. Goal was to simulate inhalation by vaping and combustion, allowing us to visually see the residue and byproducts that were left behind by each method. It's important to note that this experiment does not directly represent what happens in the human body, as the human body is a lot more complex than a weird lung that we made. However, it provides a visual comparison of the byproducts that are generated from this amount of material using the two different heating methods. For this experiment, we compared the impact of vaporizing 0.375 grams of concentrate through a Utilian 8E rig versus 7 grams of dry herb through a traditional water pipe. This concentrate has an active compound concentration of 83.1%, whereas the dry herb contains only about 6.2% of active compounds on average. This means that 1 gram of concentrate is equal to about 13.3 grams of dry herb in terms of potency. If you didn't know that, then yes, that's why you've been getting so high. Mystery solved. Using these amounts, we aim to create a fair comparison using real-world usage scenarios. We are also using water filtration, which is also known to reduce the amount of toxic substances you will inhale. On the vaporizing side, we used a Utilian 8E rig, which is a device known for its 3D heating chamber and burst hit technology. This ensures even vapor production. Conversely, we used a traditional water pipe, a very common method for combusting dry herbs. After the synthetic lung model processed each session, we noticed a striking difference in the residue left behind. When using dry herbs in the lung model, we observed that a thicker, darker residue was left behind, which is an impact that is traditionally associated with cigarette smoke. This buildup illustrates the potential impurities that can result from combustion. Remember when you were a kid and your teacher showed you that picture of the black smoker's lung and it scarred you for life? Yeah, it's like that. The visual serves as a representation of the particulate matter that can build up in your lungs, giving you insight into the process and its effects. On the vaporizing side, the results were noticeably different. The cotton showed only minimal residue, which was significantly less than the combustion side. The difference was clear. Vaporizing produced far fewer impurities and harmful byproducts. Research has long documented the negative side effects of combustion, like lung irritation or chronic respiratory illnesses. Our experiment visually demonstrates that smoke leaves behind more residue, which can contribute to long-term lung stress. While this does not mean that vaporizing is risk-free, it does highlight a key difference between the two methods. Beyond health effects, another factor that often goes unnoticed is maintenance and cleanliness. This factor does not go unnoticed with people. Take a shower and put a nice shirt on. Have some respect for yourself. The residue buildup that we got inside the water pipe was substantial. The tar-like substance left behind can be difficult to remove and may require more frequent cleaning and maintenance to keep up with functionality. Over time, this buildup can contribute to a less enjoyable experience as the device becomes harder to use and less efficient. In contrast, the Utilian 8 E-Rig required minimal cleaning. Vaporizing is potentially cleaner and more efficient. There is less residue overall, which means you will have to clean it less, and the device will stay more efficient longer. As we have explored throughout this video, both smoke and vapor have their own unique characteristics, and whichever one you choose will be ultimately up to the individual and your unique preferences and circumstances. Smoking provides a traditional ritualistic experience that many users find familiar and satisfying. The effects are fast-acting and the process is straightforward, requiring very minimal equipment. However, it also requires high temperatures that can create byproducts and will leave a residue behind. The smell is strong and tends to linger, which can be a problem for people who value discretion. However, there are some people who do not care about the smell and wear it like a badge of honor. Those people are generally known as cool guys. Vaping, on the other hand, is a more modern approach, which gives you smoother inhalation, more customization, and preserves both the flavor and the potency of your herbs. Vaporizing produces less odor and residue, possibly making it a more cleaner and discreet option. However, vaping does come with a learning curve, and the initial investment in a quality vaporizer is a little bit much for some, even if that investment will pay you back over time. Thank you so much for joining me today in exploring this controversial topic. I hope this video gave you some clarity. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. And as always, I'm Nick from TVape. Keep vaping.
The experiment shown in this video is intended for informational and educational purposes only, regardless of the